We are it, like we are it. It's like the alpha and the omega. It begins and it ends with us. Like we literally bring life to the world. So how do
Mm.
you as a woman begin to like marinate in your own divinity? Like what
Oh,
right? Like what do you do that gets you there? Like we're talking about the creativity, whatever it is for you. I think it's just like doing that because we are the alpha, we are the omega, and it's really time for us to just like be in that.
hello and welcome to Pleasure and Profits. I'm your host, Rachel Anzalone, and today we're diving into a fascinating conversation about feminine success principles with a truly remarkable guest. Stephanie Verchot is a certified executive coach, intuitive mentor, and energy alchemist with over 20 years of experience transforming the lives and businesses of visionary leaders. As the founder of SV Empowerment and creator of the Joy Method, she brings a unique blend of intuition, energy work, and strategic business acumen to everything she does. With a rich background in marketing and communications, developed while shaping iconic global brands, Stephanie now serves as Chief Wellness Officer for renowned brands while also empowering executives, ambitious entrepreneurs, and parents to tap into their inner knowing and to create extraordinary success. What makes Stephanie's approach so powerful is her ability to bridge the corporate and spiritual worlds. As an ICF certified executive coach and leadership facilitator, she combines her extensive corporate experience with her gifts as an intuitive and energy healer to help her clients build their empires with flow, not force. I loved my conversation with Stephanie today, where we talked about feminine success principles. We talked about our own experience with the pendulum swing from over masculine, over driven, over structured to all the way to the other side. And finally, finding the place in the middle that works for both of us and that we help our clients to achieve as well. This was a very fun and lively conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Hello and welcome to Pleasure and Profits. I'm here today with my guest, Stephanie Verchot. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hello, Rachel. It's so good to see you.
I'm so excited for our conversation today. I shared with you, I've been researching you. I've been reading your website and your Instagram and checking out some podcast conversations with you. And there's so much alignment and resonance between your work and my own. And yet we're very different people coming from very different backgrounds and living in very different places.
We find each
And
other. We always find each other.
yeah, we do. So I would love to start with you just sharing a little bit about what your journey has been that brought you to where you are, your transition from the corporate world to the intuitive mentoring and energy work that you're doing and coaching. What brought that into your life?
I know. It's like, oh, so energetically to kind of start the most authentic and vulnerable as we can. My mom passed away when I was a tiny little baby. So energetically since then, you go through the whole obviously like sadness and grief, and I don't think that's ever something that you fully evolve from, but it's like a constant growth. And happy side note, my dad remarried, and I always say I have two moms. I have my angel mom and my physical mom. But with my angel mom and the intuition work started right away, right? Because I think being young, being like, okay, she's not here physically, there must be a way for me to still stay in touch with her and connect with her and get her guidance and all of
Mm.
that. So intuitively and energetic in the, angelic realm and spirit world and all of that, it's been literally my whole life. From the abundance and sort of like money wealth conversation that definitely started after I left my corporate job. I was in corporate at L'Oreal and really big companies for over 10 years. And you get a paycheck at L'Oreal. It was once a month because it's a French company and they get paid once a month. But regardless, you get paid every 2 weeks, once a month. And that doesn't really force you or challenge you to look into money or wealth because you're just getting paid. But when I started my business, I'm like, wait a minute.
Mm.
There is so much to discover. So that was probably about close to 10 years ago that I started that inner work of wealth and money.
And so when you left the corporate world, did you leave to start a coaching practice? Is that your path?
Let me tell you. So I was in corporate for almost 12 years. In the last 2 years in corporate, I was like, something is off. But it was like,
Mm.
I'm making a ton of money. I have great benefits. I work for an awesome company. Like I have a great title, like all the things. So then you go through so what's wrong? What am I missing? What am I not getting? It was like a whole little bit like dark night of the soul. And then I remember it was like very dramatic. It was like January, New York, dark, cold. I called off sick from work. And then I just landed on my knees and I bawled my eyes out. And I'm like, angels, God, universe, whoever is listening, like, I need some help because homegirl is lost and confused and like doesn't know what to do. So I ended up finding coaching, loved coaching. I hired a coach. I ended up deciding to get certified as a coach. I'm giving you like the abbreviated version.
Yeah.
And I was still working full time, going to coaching school at nighttime, getting certified. And then at the end of the year, when I was done with my coaching program, I'm like, that's it. I'm quitting. This is what I'm meant to do. So literally, that's what I did, Rachel. I just got a bonus that would cover maybe like 4 months of my life because I left without a single paying client. And like, almost 10 years later, here we are.
That's amazing. And I know the answer to this because I just listened to a conversation you were having on another podcast. Did that first year go the way you thought it was going to go?
So money wise, absolutely not. Like I remember my parents have they live part-time in Miami. And I had gone to Miami because of course that year I also decided to get married. Like I had got engaged in 2016, so I'm like planning a wedding and starting a business. 2017, I will never forget. But I was going to Miami because I was getting married in Miami, and I remember driving with my mom to doing like wedding errands. I'm like, Mom, I have not been this happy and fulfilled in I don't know how long. And like, I truly felt it in my heart. I'm like, this, like marketing and branding, sales, marketing, communications, it was great. And I loved it while I was doing, but you can know when the end of a chapter is.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the fulfillment that I had ever felt. So fulfilling and energy and like knowing that this is what I'm meant to do with my life, like your Dharma, 1,000%. Financially, I think my first year as a business owner, I made $4,200, like literally.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's now it's like a multiple six figures business, and it took me a while, which we can also talk about that. But yeah, that was my first year.
Yeah. I could definitely relate in so many ways to your story for sure. And I think we should get into that in a little bit because I think as we start to have this conversation about feminine success metrics, one of the challenges that women, I think, like us face is starting a business, leaning into these feminine principles, but then in the business world, particularly in the online business world, there's this huge clash between the way that you're taught how to do things
Yeah.
and the principles that you're bringing that are your own beliefs and your philosophies and the things that you're teaching, right? And so we're going to get into that for sure.
And I would add even the third layer of the hustle culture.
Yeah.
So you have like feminine principles, you have like business building skill sets, and then you are a part of a society that's like, for you to be successful, you need to hustle your work through success. So
Yes.
we're working with like a lot of layers that can feel daunting to our feminine energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I know that you do is like you have this experience in the corporate world and you have this realm of experience and wisdom in the spiritual world, and that you're able to marry those two together in a way that allows you to be an executive coach and also do work with people who aren't executives and not necessarily in corporate, but to be able to marry those worlds together, I think is super interesting. What do you see in terms of how these approaches complement each other, or how those worlds sort of collide in good ways or bad ways?
I'm like so receiving what you're saying because I still like such a pinch me moment to be like, this is actually what I do. I remember when in that first 2017 year, and I'll get to your question, I was talking to one of my friends and I was like, I'm so conflicted because I'm very strategic and I can be very linear in my thinking, like more like as you and I would label like masculine energy. And I'm also like, let me talk to my angels. Let me like do energy healing. Let me do EFT tapping. And I'm like, I don't think that people are going to take me seriously. Like
Mm.
2017, I had to like hide crystals in my bra because, when I went to work, because people thought that that's weird. And now you buy them at Target or, whatever. And now I love that as I'm talking to people and we're new-ish to each other's world, it's like, yeah, you get it. Like that's exactly what I do. And I had a really cool experience about 6 months ago. I'm working with a male founder of like a $50 million company. And in the middle of our conversation, I'm like, let's stop right now and we're gonna do EFT tapping. And he's like, like he knows me, he trusts me, he likes me, we've had a good rapport. So he's like, all right, Steph. So I'm like, this is the only way we're gonna get actually to a solution because you're so in your mind right now. Like we love our minds, but we're like our little minds, they can only take
Yeah.
us but so far. I'm like, we're stopping right now, follow what I'm doing. We're doing EFT tapping. Literally, Rachel, within 7 minutes, he's like, I am flabbergasted that every time you ask me to do this and I resisted and then we do it. And within 7 minutes, their whole conversation, he had a big, big decision to make and it shifted everything immediately. So to sort of answer your question, I have to be so in alignment before my coaching calls because if there's
Mhm.
any sort of like insecurity within me that I'm like, oh, I don't know how they're going to respond. Because sometimes people still resist. Then sometimes I hold back and I constantly remind myself, no, this is the cutting edge. This is what's going to get them to the results that they want out of their mind and into their body, which is where we know the true wisdom of success and fulfillment exists.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if that happens to you. Like,
It does. And I've done the same sort of dance a little bit when I first started my business in the holistic health world. I was very, very concerned that I would be seen as like woo woo and not taken seriously. And so first I went down this path of like everything I do has to be science based. I need to
yes.
have the evidence. I need to. And then at some point I realized I was doing this thing where I would sit in session with somebody. I would know exactly what was going on intuitively. And then I would spend hours researching to find the evidence, which is absurd, right? Like completely backwards. And when I studied Reiki and learned to trust that in a much, much better way where I could just sit with someone and say, well, here's what my intuition is telling me, or here's what I'm sensing from this experience, or what I'm hearing that you're saying. And and that's carried through still to this day. I find myself occasionally, I'm getting better about it, but being intentional about working with people who are open to that.
That's the key. People that are open. And I think we grew up, or at least I'll speak for myself, like I grew up in an era where it was like intuition was not as well revered and respected and honored as it is
Yeah.
today. So I think there's always like a little Steph who's like, are you sure? And I'm like, girl, I've been telling you, but of course we're sure. And I'm kind of reparenting myself, to let her know that of course we get to trust ourselves. But being in these rooms and being like, no, this is the energy that I'm reading. And 10 out of 10 times is like, that's exactly how I feel. It's like, yeah, of course that's how you feel because that's, your energy can't lie.
Yeah, for sure. And we get those validations, like the number of times that I've had an intuitive hit about something and then didn't say something. And then later on, it sort of came to
The
the surface. And I'm
worst.
like, I knew that. I knew
Never
that.
again.
Yeah. And often I find that happens when I'll get like a read on a person where I feel like something's not right here. Like there's some other ulterior motive going on, or there's something. And then, usually it
You're
comes to
like,
the
yep.
surface. I'm like,
Thank you,
yep,
intuition.
yep. Yeah. Well, let's get into this conversation about feminine success metrics because you mentioned one of the things that comes up often in the world of entrepreneurship is this sort of hustle culture and the drive or the desire to be quote unquote successful in the ways that we've been taught to be successful, which very often is related to external metrics,
Yeah.
right? How big's your audience? What's your engagement? What's the revenue? who are the people that you're in circles with, who are, who are your friends, who are
Yes.
your clients, like, what does that say about you? There are all these sort of external things. So when we talk about feminine success metrics, what are the first things that come to mind for you that really distinguish that from traditional metrics?
So I like to start with asking myself, which also was part of my process in this infamous, 2017 year, where what does success mean to me?
Yeah.
Like, how do I define success? So you have everything you say that by all intentions could be success to anybody, but as I had such a just like an eye-opening sort of year, I'm like, okay, I'm super happy and I'm joyful, I'm fulfilled, but like the normal success metrics are not, I'm not checking any of those off. But I feel really good about my life. And that led me to ask myself, like, well, how do I define success? And pre 2017, it was very much like financial
Mhm.
and title, because that's really big in corporate, right? You're the
Yeah.
director, you're the VP, you're the this, you have this big of a brand. And then a lot of like external things, which are still great, but it's like the whole chasing factor. And then
Mm.
when I started looking at like, what does success mean to me? I'm like, well, when I feel happy, when I feel fulfilled, when I feel on purpose, when I feel aligned, when I feel like this thing that you can't really quantify it, but you just feel good. You're energized, right? Like you hear the birds singing and you're like, this is a beautiful day. Like that to me is success. And when I realized that as a business owner, my title could literally change every day because I can call myself
Anything you want to.
literally whatever I want to, whenever I want to, which feels really fun. And then, money wise, you can really make as much money or as quote unquote little money. Like that can vary. You don't have to wait until your bonus or a promotion. It's not once or twice a year. Then it was such an eye opener to be like, okay, so that's how it started for me. And as the years have evolved and I've really focused on that work for my client, then I've sort of put it under the umbrella of like the feminine wealth, the wheel of feminine wealth. And then there's a few areas underneath there that I'm happy to share that we start exploring to be like, what does success mean to you? And then you have to start, which is like where EFT tapping comes, which is later down the road, reprogramming your brain, right? To be able to believe that those things actually mean success to you and not just to say like, oh, being joyful is successful, but you don't really believe it. And then
Yeah.
there's, inner conflict within that.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think, tell me if this resonates, that when you figure out what those actual success metrics are for yourself, then there's this place where you have to reconcile. So what does that mean in terms of money? Because I also need to earn a living, right? And so I think that what I became aware of was that the money became about being able to support the other
Mm.
principles,
Hmm.
and to be, and one of those principles for me is to be able to have impact in the world, right?
Yes.
And that I can't have the impact that I want to have if I don't have the money to
Yes.
sustain myself or to invest in the things that are important to me. And so how do you reconcile that, or what have you seen with your clients in terms of them coming to terms with the financial piece and the rest?
I think money work will be a forever lifelong, and I'm sure you agree with it, right?
Yeah.
Like a lifelong teacher. I think that, so my experience, and as you were saying that, when you're in it and you don't think there's like a way out, like I've been in it with money where I'm like, I had to cancel my Spotify. So I had like an extra $20 in my account to like
Yeah. Yeah.
do something, take the subway, whatever it was back in the day. And then I think back then I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be out of this. And as I was hearing you talk, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have kept, and I'm sure if I pieced together things, kept a journal, because my mindset, my consciousness around money has shifted so much. But we're also taught systematically that money is attached to our worth. So it's
Yes.
like the more money you're making, the more worthy you are, because then you can have all these flashy things. And that takes such discipline to be able to dismantle that mentality, to start really distancing yourself that, because, from money, because then the other part of it that I went through as well, it's like, well, the more value I give, the more money I'm going to make. Like, maybe not. That doesn't mean,
Mm.
like we just want to like group money with like worth and value and like free stuff. And it's like, yeah, but I also can't create a business by giving free value all the time. So I don't know if I necessarily agree that the more value, the more money you're going to have. Like, you just be good at what you do and you show up for your job and you're disciplined at what you do, and things begin to add up.
Yeah. What's really funny hearing you talk about that is that we do have, most of us were raised with this idea that we have to earn every dollar, and we show up and we work hard and we should be grateful for what we've been given, and, sort of all that mentality. Right. And so shifting out of that mindset can be challenging, even though if you look around, there are so many examples of people who don't work hard and have lots and lots of money, who don't deliver value, and yet somehow the money is there and it comes, right? Like I look at some examples like the Fire Festival. Are you familiar with that? Right. So first, when I watched the documentary on that, and I just thought,
Wild.
wild. So many things about it that I was like, yeah, these are all like everything he was doing right up to the point where the thing was was a complete failure. Everything he was doing up to that point, I have seen done in the entrepreneurial space again and again and again, right? Sell it before you build it, make the promise. Once you have the money, then you can figure out how to deliver it, sort of all these things. And I've seen people sell their story again and again and get the money in. Thankfully, most people actually deliver, right? To some extent. But that's a great example of someone who, didn't work hard, didn't provide value, and yet the money was like flowing in. And in fact, I think that guy is selling a new Fire Festival and people are investing, right? And
He
people,
is, because he was interviewed a while ago on the Him and Her podcast, and I'm like, dude,
what?
this guy like just will not stop. But I
Yeah.
have two personal examples. So I gave birth 3 years ago to the most just delicious little girl.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And when she came, I was like, okay, well, things have to shift in my business because I want to spend time with her. Like, eventually she's going to go to school, and the first like 3-4 years to me, I mean forever, but the first 3-4 years are so important as like a mom and all the things. So I had to shift my business model to be like, okay, well, how do I work less and still continue growing my business? And I was doing my numbers, before taxes were due, I guess, like, a month ago.
Yeah.
And I like tripled my business in 2024. And I probably work like 25-hour weeks. So I have that testament of like, you
Yeah.
can work not the intensity has stayed the same, Rachel, and if not increased, because I'm like a generator in human design. Like, I
Yeah.
am just all in where I'm here, but it's not a matter of like working 80-hour weeks in order to make 80 times the amount. It's like when I'm here, I'm present and I'm all in. And so that's one part that I can personally testify. And the other thing is, I am a big student of Abraham Hicks.
Yes.
And right, they talk about that all the time. Like, we're not equating the hours to the wealth. We are equating the quality of life, your thoughts, your beliefs in order to create the wealth that you're wanting to create.
Yeah, that's a great, great example. And it brings to mind, especially the conversation about Abraham Hicks, the idea of receiving versus
Mm,
earning.
mm.
And certainly that's something that they teach about and talk about. And in terms of when we're talking about feminine energy, the energy of receiving is certainly feminine. And so do you feel like that's one of the things that you really had to shift for yourself, was your mindset around receiving versus earning?
When I first discovered, and it might have been through Abraham Hicks, that the energy of money is feminine,
Mm,
I remember that was like, wait, what? And it's like, no, in this society, we've kind of shoved it into like a very masculine, transactional energy.
yeah.
Um, the earning versus receiving, yes, that was like a very specific, and it took me a second to like let me wrap. But I definitely started as the worthy, right? Are my services worthy of me earning this kind of money,
Mm,
right? And simultaneously, I've always been very disciplined of raising my prices year over year. Like, I think I'd heard that when I first started a business, and it really stuck with me. So I'm very disciplined about doing that. But some years, then it began from like earning. Am I worthy of this? And should I make this kind of money and all of that? To I know the magic, in essence, that I am bringing to these calls. I know
yeah.
that's life changing and transformational. So I receive all of it, right? The money. I also received, like, before we got on a call, you were asking me how my day was. And I'm like, I had a day, full of coaching calls. And as we hear this wonderful siren, I had a day full of coaching calls, and I feel so energized by it. So the
Yeah.
receiving isn't just in the bank account when my client gives me a retainer every month, but just by being in conversation with me and the alignment, the focus that I bring to our calls, your day is automatically improved, just like mine. Which is, side note, I always say I work with clients that I love to work with
Yeah.
because I bring like my A plus 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 game energetically. I'm so squeaky clean energetically when I'm coming to the calls that I want to feel so good when we hang up as much as I want you to feel amazing by the time we hang up. So I think that's all part of the earning and receiving in the wealth.
Yeah, I think this idea of receiving as kind of like the opposite of earning,
Oh, do
right? Like that
tell.
there's sort of opposite energies that earning brings to mind for me, like an efforting, like a pushing forward, like a right versus
Yes.
receiving is just allowing and getting in, as Abraham Hicks talks about vibrational resonance in order to be able to receive, right?
Yes.
It's more about your state of being than it is about what you're doing. And it's interesting because I think that as women in particular, we are in our culture, our society, we're sort of trained that to be given something like as a gift, to be just handed something maybe doesn't carry the same value, doesn't like we shouldn't see that as having succeeded. So like in terms of success metrics, we might receive something and yet go, oh yeah, but I didn't earn it, and so we discount it, right?
Toxic.
Yeah.
I feel
And
like
I don't know if that's the same for men.
no, I don't think it is at all. And as I was hearing you say that, I went through a period that I was like healthily obsessing over Cleopatra, and how I also think that obsessing term is like overused and oversaturated, but in a healthy way, where I was really studying her and reading about her and understanding how she built her empire and how she was a leader,
Yeah.
in back in the day. And she had this perfect balance of, I'm going to take action, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do the thing, and I'm also going to lay down in this beautiful gold bed and all the beautiful things, opulence that she lived around, and she allowed herself to receive. So I
Mm.
think, how do the feminine becomes on, we have this gift of just like looking out and being like, wow, that's like I'm like looking at a beautiful tree, or the way the sun's shining, or the way that we get to nurture, like when we're eating and truly like enjoying that, and understanding that all of these aspects of our lives add up to the success metrics when it comes to femininity, right? I think it's taking a minute to slow down and understanding like the clothes that you're wearing and the way you're talking to your family or your clients, the way that you're like brushing your hair and eating and having connections with people. It is all adding in the bank of wealth, and
Mm.
financial wealth is one component of feminine wealth, but there's these other components that I always say, like, everything adds up. It's not going to be like the one post or the one package or the one contract that's going to
Yeah.
get you to the multi-million.
Yeah.
It's like a little tiny actions that also include your vitality and your health and your relationships and your sensuality and your connection with your body, that are all going to add up to whatever final sort of like top of the mountain success you're looking for.
Yeah, and it's all those little things that make it sustainable, right? If you had to do all of it at once in order to get from point A to point B, nobody would get there
It
because
would
it would be
collapse.
impossible, right?
Yes.
It's about doing those actions every single day, the small things that add up and add up that in a way that's sustainable over a long period of time, because you might not hit six figures in the first year or the first 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just sort of in response to that idea of hustle culture, when I started my business, which was in 2009, I think. Yeah, I think it was 2009.
Amazing. Congratulations, by the
Thank
way.
you. And there have been many iterations of that. And I did not hit, I thought I was going to hit six figures the first year. Did not happen. Took me
Same.
many, many years. Although I think I made 13,000 the first year.
Hey,
I thought,
okay.
yeah. And then there were years where it was like, oh, now I made 30. Okay, great. Now I made, like you
Yes.
get there. Um, but I sort of came up in the industry in this era where it was truly like you could sleep when you're dead. Like hustle, hustle, hustle. Everybody was hustling. It was like you got to get there faster, you got to get there better, you got to, and it just is for most people that's not sustainable and it's not desirable and it doesn't align with a life where you have a baby at home that you want to spend time with or family or other priorities outside of your work. And I think that as we shift culturally towards a more feminine, more aligned way of being in the world, that it seems like there's just more and more of that coming to the surface. Like it's becoming more of a normal way of operating. Do
And
you
also
see
a
that?
way, yeah, like a way where people are more curious,
Mm-hmm.
Like I think if it would have been like, oh, I work on average 30-hour days or, 30-hour weeks or 10, 5-hour days. It's like, no, you don't, where now it's like, tell me more, like how does that work? I think there's like a level of like curiosity of, okay, I do believe that, or how does that work? I've never done it before. I didn't think it was possible. And I think that's the part that for people, if I can speak for you too, it's like, I think, for me, of being able to have these conversations, and look, if you want to work 80-hour weeks, like Gary Vee style, and that is your
Yeah.
jam, and you feel energized and you love that, like, go be you, right? Like, I don't think my take, and I think for you either, we're not saying don't do that if that's truly a
Yeah,
fire and a
absolutely
turn
not.
on, right?
Yeah.
It's just for me, it is not. And maybe when my daughter starts to school or in a different season, I'll be like, I'm working 100-hour weeks and I love it. I think it's like the generator in me that can be a workhorse. That's just not the season. And on top of it, it's been nice to know that you can still get results that lead you to a healthy, fulfilling, joyful life, even without a really intense output.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point that it's about the curiosity that there are more and more there's more a tendency I think for people to be questioning why are we doing it this way?
Mm.
And isn't could there be a better way to do this versus well this is how everybody's saying to do it, so I guess I have to do that too,
And like a
right?
shame if you're not into like the 100-hour work week.
And so much of it, I think, is about questioning and questioning for yourself. Because I totally agree with you. There are seasons in people's lives where they feel driven to produce, right? And then there are seasons where that's not the case. And only we can know
Mm-hmm.
where we're at and that mix and what's right for us right now. Where we get stuck, I think, is when we don't ask ourselves those questions.
Or, right, going with the flow. This is the way it's been done. Let me
Yeah.
continue doing it that way. And for me, I think that, I mean, look, giving birth, not everybody's going to have babies. Not everybody wants to have babies. It's just for me, that was such a catalyst in my own life to be like, oh, I don't want to put her in a daycare that she's there 8 to 5 every day when she's 6 months. Like, I could not fathom leaving my daughter. And there was a part of me that was so grateful that I started my business 7 years prior, so I could have that privilege to be like, let me figure out how this works. And
Yeah.
then in knowing that I didn't want to put her in a daycare all the time, that led me to be like, okay, well, how can I increase my prices? What kind of clients do I want to work with? How does this model actually work? Maybe if I wouldn't have my daughter, I would have continued, which also would have been fine.
Yeah.
But when life brings you that experiences and then the old model is not working, then you get to ask yourself, like, what of this, like, how
Yeah.
do I continue building and achieving and feeling successful in a way that works for me now?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think there are so many examples of women that I know who either having a baby, like getting pregnant or having a baby or having some other life circumstance come up, whether it's caring for an aging parent or a health issue of their own, or a health issue, somebody important to them, some circumstance that changed that required them to reassess and figure out how to do it differently. And that's what the catalyst was, for them to find a way to make the same amount of money in less hours, or to make more money in the same amount of time, or whatever it is. But they needed something to prompt it, right?
To be that, like, yeah, exactly. Let me like push you a little harder. Let me open you up and let you know like you are fully capable of that next
Yeah.
level. I also remember I had there's two coaches that one of them went to coaching school with me, and we've just stayed in touch for like the past 10 years. And like about before I gave birth, we do these like 90-day challenges, and we do it within like our mastermind, and it's like we give it a project name, and you want it to be like quirky but short and to the point. So for a while my project name was like 100K in 10 hours. And initially it was like a play on words of like, I want to make $100,000 working 10-hour weeks, because I thought that would be like the minimum with my daughter and all the things. And as it continued to evolve, and I still haven't manifested this, but as that was passed and surpassed, I'm like, oh, what if the day that I make literally $100,000 in less than 10 hours? Because people make 100,000 hours in like 30 minutes, in an hour. Like there's so much. And that's the other thing that
Right.
Abraham Hicks talks about. There's so much money and there's so much wealth in the world, that when you start realizing like the world has always grown and evolved and gotten bigger and more money and more abundance, then you get so excited about the possibilities. And that's one of the things that I feel like I always say, like, that's the magic that I bring when people get caught up in like their little tiny, like, but there is not enough money and there people don't want to hire and the recession and the economy. I don't know. I don't watch the news, for better or for worse. But I believe that there is always wealth, and there's always opportunity, not just financial wealth, but just to live a truly holistic, wealthy life.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that so much of where we are, or where we find ourselves when we find ourselves in a place where we feel stuck, it's because we're focused on doing things the way that we've always done them, or thinking that there's a way this has to be done, and not asking those questions, and sometimes not aiming high enough, or not shooting big enough. This is one of the things I see often with women entrepreneurs in particular, a lot of times with women who are getting started in the early days, is a focus on just what they think might be possible next. And
Mm.
like, well, I was making 50,000 in my job before, so I just want to make 50,000. I just want to get there. And then I just want to get to, and I just want to get to, and I am so over the word just.
Yes.
Like,
Remove
why?
that.
And maybe you haven't made $100,000 in 10 hours yet, but you probably have made way more than you would have if you stayed in the mindset of, I have to work 40 hours to make 40,000, or I have to.
Listen,
Yeah.
preach. That's like preach. I always challenge my clients, like, where did you come up with that? Why not four
Yes.
times that amount?
I love that question. Where did you come up with that? Oh my God, I'm stealing
Because
that.
half the time it's like, I don't know, isn't that like what we're supposed to do? Isn't
Yeah.
that like what I should just like, because my other job or whatever, I'm like, whoever told you that? What about four times that amount? And then at the beginning, they're like, no. And then once we continue the conversation, then it's like, I see what you mean. Like, maybe I should,
Maybe. Yeah.
and that's when you have like the whole like quote unquote unrealistic results, because yeah, you have to start with like unrealistic goals to achieve unrealistic results. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we stay in the same little box of like whatever comfortable square you like to live on.
Yeah. And I think that's the case for everything. It's anything that you're challenging yourself to do is something that you've never done before, right?
Yes. And
And
like
so,
also go for it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think this year I'm like such in a mentality of like, who cares? Ask for the promotion, ask for the bonus, raise your prices, do some, like, I've had the most wild, in the best way possible, collaborations, because I'm like, I'm just going to send the email, like
Yeah.
talking about just, but in the other way, when you're just like, it's just an email, it's just a phone call, it is fine. They don't respond. Nobody cares. They respond. I have an opportunity to do incredible work. Like my work is more important than my fear. So
Yeah.
it's like fear, I love you, and go to the back of the car, like take a back seat. We'll do some tapping on that later. But like I'm on a mission, and like we're on it.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I want to go back. You said, I think you said that there are 8 success metrics that you focus on and that you work with people on. Do you want to give us a little overview of what that looks like?
Yeah, a little hint.
Yeah.
So the 8 metrics, when it comes, I call them like the feminine wealth wheel metrics. So obviously we're going to have finance and financial freedom because we love money, and yes, let's bring the money. Then there is creativity and expression, right? And whether
Mm.
you are literally an artist and you want to be painting, or you want to do crochet or do your little dots and whatever colors, like the way you wear your makeup, your jewelry, whatever way you want to express yourself. Then we talk about spirituality. And when I talk about spirituality, it might be a turnoff for people, but you can change it to like intuition, your sixth
Yeah.
sense, right? When you're just connecting to something bigger than our, little physical bodies, to
Yeah.
just like a bigger energy than us. Then we have health and vitality, right? And this is something that's like such an area of like exploration of like, how are you taking care of your body? What is the energy that you're getting from your body? I always tell my daughter, and it's something that I'm so intentional in programming her beliefs, and like, you have a healthy body. Our bodies are want to be
Mm.
healthy, our bodies want to heal, our bodies, they're here for us. So really, what is that vitality that you're bringing to your life? Personal growth. I think personal growth is such an area of wealth where you're like, I'm learning French, or I'm learning how to play the guitar, or I'm working with a coach. Like, it's just an opportunity to always evolve and allow ourselves to be challenged by life in the best way possible.
Yeah.
um, we have relationships and connection, and these can be intimate relationships, they can be platonic, but what is your community like, right? Are you like, I ask my clients to always rate 1 to 10. Out of 10, awesome relationships, everybody, we're good, we're happy. 3, 4, I have a ton of arguments with my family. Like, there's an opportunity, right, to evolve. And then the final is impact. Like,
Yeah.
what is the impact, whether you are like an Oprah that you're have like a schools in Africa and you're funding education for a lot of people, or whether you're somebody like us that's like, my impact is in my local church, right? My impact is with, taking my daughter and playing with other kids, or going to like, picking up, I do this in Central Park a lot, like picking up, plastic or whatever from Central Park and helping with pollution. Like, what is the impact? Having a podcast, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
sharing an impact and you're impacting. So those are like the 8 areas that I think, having, rating them, and then having an understanding, what are your 1, 2, 3s that are like not lower in a negative way, but you feel less fulfilled by, and what are
Yeah.
like your 7, 8, 9, 10s that you feel like, I'm super wealthy in this area.
I love the 8 areas, and I agree. I think that they're so important, so such important factors. And I think one of the things that I feel as you're talking about that feels true, I think, of a feminine approach to these things is that there needs to be some balance in all of them. And I don't like the word balance. There's no world where everything is going to be in perfect equilibrium, right? But if we're all in on one area
Yeah.
and completely neglecting another area, then something's gonna collapse, something's gonna fall apart, something's not gonna hold, something's gonna feel even maybe just dissatisfying, right? And so I think that's one of the distinct differences when we look at the masculine versus the feminine, is
Mhm.
that often the masculine is like, we go all in on this one thing, and we'll worry about everything else later. But that's
Burnout.
not, yeah, that's burnout. That's not a sustainable way to operate. And we were talking about kind of the hustle culture and the sleep when you're dead and that sort of that approach. It's like, well, maybe you can do that if you have a wife at home who's cooking your meals and taking care
That
of your
should get a
house.
salary, by
And
the way.
right, absolutely. But that doesn't work for the majority of women. That doesn't work for the majority of people. Even you now have conversations with men who've operated that way. Guess what? They're not happy
At all. Like,
at
their stress
all.
levels are awful, their
Yeah.
vitality, their health. And I wholeheartedly agree with you when you talk about the masculine and the feminine. And I often talk about, and I'm exaggerating, but it's like, if you think about like eating and drinking, like masculine and feminine, whatever, drinking water is feminine, eating is masculine. You would never be like, I'll just won't drink water for a few weeks and I'll just eat. Like, that's not important. You know what I mean? Like, it
That's
does
not going to work.
it doesn't work. You need them
Yeah.
both. And I think we've operated mostly on like, I'll just eat and forget about the water. And that leads to literally to all kinds of health problems. But obviously it's impossible. Where nowadays we're understanding like you have to drink your water as much as you have to eat your veggies in order to have like holistic, wholesome, fulfilled existence and be happy and not be ridden with all sort of like health implications.
Yeah.
Also, I am not like on my aura ring. I like have
I
to
love
brag
my
about.
Aura ring.
Listen, I've had like the highest sleep
Yes.
rating because I'm in bed with my daughter at like 8 p.m. And it's like the best sleep I've had, I think, as like an adult. Like I've been sleeping like 9 hour days. And I
Yeah.
truly wake up, I'm like, I'm refreshed. And I'm not scrolling, obviously, because I'm sleeping with her and I'm not about to bring screens into the bed. So I'm sort of like totally leveraging the fact that I bed share with my daughter and she goes to bed early and I go to bed at the same time. And notice that like sleep truly will like change your life.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. When I got my Aura ring and started paying attention, I realized that, oh, I've been
It's
basically
a,
sleep deprived my entire life.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
Yeah.
now it's like game changer.
Yeah. Incredible. Okay. So, in terms of these feminine success principles and working with organizations, so many, and we touched on this earlier on this idea that there are so many heart centered entrepreneurs, people like us who started their business because they want to have impact. They want to make people's lives better. They have shared values, shared principles, shared beliefs with us around a lot of this stuff. And yet, the way that they've learned how to do business doesn't align with those principles, right? And so, for that person, how do you suggest, or what advice would you give in terms of how they start to incorporate or lean more into these feminine principles when it comes to their business?
You know, Rachel, it's such an interesting it's a complex answer. And I say that because I've experienced all the eras as an entrepreneur where I'm like
Yeah.
very masculine, right post corporate, of course, then like very feminine where I'm just like I'm going to manifest and like affirm my way to whatever the number I wanted to make or whatever clients. And now I'm in the very like a very balanced feminine
Yeah.
and masculine, you know, and I'm sure you've experienced the same thing. So I think that looking at your business and really holding yourself accountable, like do the feminine as in take care of your vitality, take care of your health, do the magic affirmations. And I call magic, but it's very much like it helps, right? Like the science,
Yeah.
the EFT tapping, the affirmation, the beliefs, get clear on your intentions, right? And then on the other side of, you know, the moon, the pie, then you have like the action. You know, like what are your programs? Like I was talking to a client and she had a certain goal and I broke it down for her and I was like, well, how much do you charge? X was. How much money do you want to make X? I'm like, do you realize that in order for you to get to that number, you have to talk to 100 people a week in order to hit your conversion rate? She was
Yeah.
flat. She's like, I'm like, of course you're not doing that. Nobody's doing that. I don't care who you be. Nobody be doing that.
Yeah.
So if you're not aligning and being really strategic about what are your price points, how many people do you need to talk to, what goals are you trying to achieve, which is very masculine because it's very structured and linear, you can't just live in the affirmations and the manifestation. We need to blend them both together. So if you're in your era of like manifesting and affirmations and intentions, love that. Bring a little bit of discipline. Right.
Yeah.
Like my business totally shifted. I'm super creative. I used to have like 27 programs at any given time and offerings. And when I said enough, I'm still going to do all my creativity because this is who I be, but I'm only going to sell 3 things. It completely shifted because I was very focused, right? If you're in your masculine where you're like, I need to do 100 things, then, you know, relax, drink your tea, you know, do your mushrooms, do your crystals, take a bath. Like, so I think you need to really get honest in like, where is your strength? And then what's the other piece that's missing in order to get to the next level that you want to get to?
Yeah, I agree. I think that we often do the pendulum swing, right? Until we find that place in the middle. And I've had that experience myself of having, worked in environments where gosh, I think of the A League of Her Own movie, Tom Hanks, there's no crying in baseball, right? I've worked in environments where it was like, I have to show up like this and be the boss and take, get business done. And I could only do that so long. And then I would just feel completely out of integrity with myself. And this pendulum would swing in the other direction. And I would be like, and now I'm going to lay on the beach and I'm going to do yoga and I'm going to, and sort of finding that place in the middle that works for you to bring the structures and bring the feminine energy. And that's full circle back to where we started, which is, I think one of probably the key things that you and I have in common is that ability to assess, to see both of those sides and how they integrate and to help other people do the same.
Precisely, because I love that you labeled it like the two sides of the pendulum. Like my work comes in where it's like, and I'm sure you do, right, coming more to the masculine, like we're out in the land of the fairies, which we love, but like you got to take action. You got to make a phone call, you got to send an email, we got to look at your offerings, or you're so in your mind that you're this close to burnout. And that's when I'm like, take a day off, go to the beach, like ground in nature. So being able to see that in a person. And also, I coach with a lot of tough love, like I can hold your hand, but I'm also going to call you out. It's the only way that I feel like people get results. And it's also the expectation that they like, if they're hiring me as your coach, I'm not your friend, right? Like for the most part, we end up being friends at some point. but but I'm going to call you out in a way that your friend wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately I want to see you succeed. And I'm super proud of us as you're saying all of that I agree with you. Like, it feels really good to hear that, yes, you're right. I've arrived at a place where I have a really good balance. And as soon as I'm a little off kilt, I'm like, come back, Steph. Like I'm able to really pinpoint. And it feels really hard. I mean, it feels really good to receive that and recognize that as a business owner. So thank you for that, for
Thank
naming
you.
it. Yeah,
thank
you too.
for doing the work, and thank you for sharing it with us here.
For sure. It's we love what we do.
Okay, so before we go, I have a couple more questions for you. Number one, I think it's super important that we, as women, as leaders in the feminine business world, credit our inspirations, our influences, the people who really have helped us to get where we are. So, what teachers, authors, mentors, leaders do you follow or have you learned from that you feel like have informed who you are and your work in the world?
So I don't consume a whole lot, probably in the past few years, because I think that has opened up my intuition channels a lot. However, the modalities definitely within like theta healing has been super powerful, and EFT tapping. So that's something that I have learned and worked through my coach Nancy, that I just give her, she is just amazing. And Abraham Hicks, like I feel like Abraham is just permanently situated in one portion of my brain, because that is one content that I consume often, either for learning or just for resetting my nervous system. So yeah, that feels like a fair naming of the people that I work with, that I learn from. Recently, I started working with an incredible energy healer that I didn't talk often in this call, but she deserves credit. Her name's Julia Albane, and she's just an incredible energy worker, and I feel like she's going to teach me a lot too.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. On the Abraham Hicks topic, do you find that sometimes you can be in a like you can't figure something out, and then you hear that the like, what would Abraham, if I asked Abraham this question, how would they answer?
Yes.
And then you're like, oh yeah, I already know
it.
this.
I get it.
Yeah, that's great.
I love her. I love them.
Yeah. So what's one thing that you wish women understood about their inherent relationship with success and abundance?
That we are it, like we are it. It ends, it's like the alpha and the omega. It begins and it ends with us. Like we literally bring life to the world. So how do you, as a woman, begin to like marinate in your own divinity? Like what
Oh,
right? Like what do you do that gets you there. Like like we're talking about the creativity. Like, is it like for me, it's coaching. Like that just brings me into my divinity. But I don't know, whatever it is for you, I think it's just like doing that because yeah, we are the alpha, we are the omega, and it's really time for us to just like be in that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. What are you doing to marinate in your divinity? Ah, so
Even as you
good.
said it back to me, I'm like, oh, I am marinating.
That is so good. I love it. Ah, oh my gosh. Um,
Goosebumps, love.
my cat's like saying hi. She's like, hey,
Hi. She's
um,
validating our marination in
she
divinity.
is.
She's
She's
like,
into
yep.
it for sure. All right, Stephanie, thank you so much. Where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your work? How do they find you?
All the things. I am super the most active on Instagram, and I'm sure you will link it somewhere in here. It's Stephanie
Absolutely.
Vercheau, but it's a lot of letters. And I am very active on my Substack as well, Joyfully Empowered. So check it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I've loved this conversation.
Thank you,
We could go
Rachel.
on for hours, I think.
Yes, maybe there's a part two, but thank you so much for your time. And this was so good.
Thank you for being here, Stephanie. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, remember your pleasure is your power. Take care.